A new approach to aging. No remarriage, no nursing homes, no hired caregivers. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of my podcast. Thank you for tuning in. Today, I'd like to share a personal story about how I've embraced a new approach to aging, one that, in my experience, has balanced independence, companionship, and emotional well-being without resorting to remarriage, entering a nursing home, or hiring a live-in caregiver. I hope that by opening up about my journey, I can inspire or encourage others to reflect on their own retirement plans, mental health, and the importance of meaningful social connections. Allow me to introduce myself. My name is James, and I'm currently 73 years old. Before retiring, I worked for nearly 4 decades in a bustling city, Chicago, to be precise. Although that city has a lot of charm, I found it increasingly hectic as I got older. Eventually, I decided to return to my hometown, a quieter place tucked away in a beautiful, more rural region surrounded by rolling hills and tall trees. I'd always imagined spending my golden years somewhere less expensive and less congested. As you might guess, big city life doesn't always blend well with the needs of older adults seeking peace, fresh air, and a slower pace. My wife and I made that move together when we both retired. We left our home in Chicago to our son, who still works there. We figured we didn't need a large house in a big city anymore, and our grown children could definitely use the space. At the time, we thought, let's downsize, simplify, and enjoy a more comfortable, stress-free life. So that's exactly what we did. We said our farewells to Chicago's skyscrapers and relocated to a modest single-story home in my hometown, where the air is fresher, traffic is lighter, and the cost of living is significantly lower. We were confident that this setting would help us relax, enjoy each other's company, and stay healthier. For a few blissful years, that decision worked out better than I ever imagined. My wife and I woke up each morning to the sound of birds chirping rather than honking horns, and we spent our afternoons caring for a small vegetable garden or taking leisurely strolls around the neighborhood. Our finances allowed us to maintain a comfortable standard of living. After all, living expenses here are far more affordable than they ever were in Chicago. My modest pension and Social Security checks went a lot further than they would have in the city. So, at first, it felt like the ideal setup. My wife and I enjoying a well-earned retirement without putting any burden on our children. Sometimes people ask me, James, why didn't you just keep living with your son so you'd all be under one roof? After all, that arrangement works well for some families. However, our son and his wife both have full-time jobs, they're raising 2 wonderful children, and they live in a relatively crowded area. We learned a lesson the hard way right after my son got married. We temporarily moved in with them, and while everything was fine initially, we quickly felt the space was too cramped. 6 people under one roof in that busy urban environment meant endless hustle, bustling schedules, and practically no quiet corners for reflection. We certainly didn't want to add to any stress or cause tension. That realization reinforced our plan to move somewhere we could truly embrace retirement on our own terms. For a number of years, it was the perfect scenario. We had our modest home, a warm community, and a sense of independence. However, 5 years ago, everything changed dramatically when my wife passed away. If you've lost a spouse or partner, you'll understand the mix of grief, confusion, and fear that follows. Day-to-day activities that used to be shared, like grocery shopping or planning dinner, suddenly felt hollow. The home that once felt cozy now seemed far too large and quiet. That emptiness weighed on me heavily. Friends, neighbors, and family all offered condolences and gentle suggestions. Some were quite insistent that I should consider remarriage, reminding me that I still had a lot of life left to live. Others advised me to move to a retirement community or even a nursing home so that I wouldn't be alone. A few suggested hiring a live-in caregiver to handle cooking, cleaning, and companionship. But here's the thing. For me, at least, none of those options resonated. Let's start with the idea of remarriage. It's not that I disapprove of anyone remarrying after losing a spouse. Far from it. I've known many older adults who found a second chance at love and built beautiful relationships. Yet, I personally felt that after nearly half a century of marriage to one wonderful woman, that chapter of my life was complete. Reopening it with a different person didn't feel like the right choice. Plus, I've seen remarriages lead to complex financial and emotional entanglements. Adult children sometimes worry about inheritance. Step families might clash, or couples may have difficulty melding their distinct lifestyles. While it works for some, it just wasn't something I wanted to pursue. What about moving into a nursing home? Initially, that seemed like a practical route. Someone else could handle chores, meals, and daily tasks, right? I imagined a place with friendly staff, well-maintained facilities, opportunities to make friends, and easy access to medical care if needed. Yet, I became hesitant after hearing the story of my sister-in-law, Christine. She had significantly more financial resources than me. She also had 3 grown kids who lived scattered across the country. Not wanting to become a burden to any of them, she chose a highly reputed nursing home for her later years. It all looked very promising on paper. She was promised comfortable living quarters, nutritious meals, communal activities, and plenty of social interactions. Unfortunately, the reality was far different from the glossy brochures. Christine found that the staff was overworked and couldn't possibly provide truly personalized care. Meals were mass-produced with cost efficiency in mind, rather than flavor or nutrition. Staff members were cordial, but had very little time for real conversation. Meanwhile, communal living often meant abiding by a strict schedule. Meal times were set, lights-out times were set, and even social activities ran on a tight timetable. For someone used to the autonomy of her own home, Christine felt trapped and isolated despite being surrounded by other residents. In just a few months, she lost a lot of weight, grew depressed, and eventually moved back to her old house. Watching her go from a vibrant, independent woman to someone who looked visibly tired and older in such a short span convinced me that a nursing home, at least in that traditional model, was not for me. Then people suggested hiring a private caregiver. I did weigh that option. It might have solved some day-to-day issues. However, let's face it, good in-home caregivers can be quite expensive, and my pension and Social Security checks only stretch so far. Apart from cost, I realized that having a caregiver in my home 24/7 wouldn't necessarily ease my sense of loneliness. Yes, I'd have someone around to help with cooking, cleaning, and maybe even driving me to appointments. But would that person provide genuine companionship or emotional support? Some caregivers do become close friends with the people they assist, but that isn't guaranteed. It could also feel like an employer-employee dynamic rather than an equal natural relationship. And that's not what I wanted. I was missing real camaraderie, someone to chat with, laugh with, and share daily life with, but without the pressures that come with marriage or romantic commitment. One night, while sitting alone at my kitchen table, I started brainstorming. Isn't there some way to combine the freedom of living alone with the benefits of having a trusted companion? Then, an idea struck me. What if 2 older people who share values, interests, and mutual trust decided to help each other day by day? They could still maintain their own homes, their own personal spaces, and their own finances, yet offer assistance and companionship to one another whenever needed. Immediately, I realized that I might already know someone who could be that companion. That someone turned out to be my childhood neighbor, Patricia. She lived just a short walk from my house. We grew up on the same street decades ago, but had lost touch after leaving for college and starting our own families. By sheer coincidence, we ended up retiring in the same small hometown. She, too, had lost her spouse. Her adult children lived states away, and, like me, she had no desire to uproot her life or become a burden. We reconnected properly about a year after my wife's passing, when Patricia stopped by to drop off some homemade soup. We found ourselves reminiscing about our childhood memories, biking around the block with friends, playing tag in the front yard, chatting with neighbors. There was this easy warmth between us, something that transcended time and distance. Over the next few months, we started to help each other informally. Sometimes she'd call me if she needed a jar opened or a heavy box carried in from her porch. Other times, I'd swing by her place with extra produce from my garden. We'd share dinners now and then, or just sit on one of our porches, talking into the evening. Slowly I realized that this was someone who truly understood my situation. She had faced the same loneliness and sense of displacement after her husband died. She didn't want to remarry either. She wasn't comfortable in a nursing home, and she didn't want to hire a caregiver if she could help it, partly due to the costs and partly because she cherished her independence. Eventually, I gathered my courage and approached her with my idea. Patricia, what if we support each other as friends in this stage of life? We spend time together during the day, helping each other run errands, cooking together, or doing some chores. But we each still go home to our own place at night, so we keep our private space. I worried for a moment that she might find this concept strange or suspect I was proposing something else. But to my great relief, she immediately understood the spirit behind it and agreed to give it a try. From that point on, we built a unique lifestyle we called mutual support for aging. It started quite simply. We made a schedule that focused on shared activities. Once or twice a week, we'd shop for groceries together. We alternated who cooked dinner and where, so if Monday was my cooking day at my place, maybe Tuesday was her cooking day at hers. We also began sharing some of our hobbies. For example, we both found fishing incredibly peaceful. Many late afternoons, just before sunset, we'd grab our gear and head to a nearby lake. Even if we only caught a few small fish, the experience of sitting by the water, chatting quietly, and enjoying the breeze was priceless. In the mornings, we discovered we both liked light gardening. Patricia had the most amazing collection of roses in her front yard, while I tended to tomatoes and cucumbers in my backyard. Some days, we'd spend hours just potting new plants, trimming branches, or designing flower beds. It was fulfilling to see the tangible results of our teamwork. Vibrant blooms in her yard and fresh produce in mine. We'd trade or swap items. I'd bring her some tomatoes, and she'd clip a few rose stems for my dining table. These small gestures nurtured not only our gardens, but also our friendship. However, we realized something was missing: exercise. While gardening and fishing are relatively light activities, they don't exactly get your heart rate up. So, we agreed to sign up for a local seniors fitness class at the community center. To our surprise, they had a low-impact aerobics and dance class specifically for older adults. The first time we attended, we were a bit self-conscious. I've never been much of a dancer, and Patricia hadn't done anything like this since her high school days. Yet, everyone in the class was friendly and encouraging. Before long, we were stepping, swaying, and even laughing at our own missteps. That class gave us more than just physical exercise. It brought us a sense of connection to others in our town. We started looking forward to those sessions and even practiced some of the routines at home when we felt adventurous. As the weeks turned into months and months into years, our arrangement became second nature. Not only did we spend our days in each other's company, but we also split certain costs. We agreed early on to keep finances transparent and fair. If we were buying groceries together, we'd each pay for what we specifically needed, or split shared items in half. If we went out to eat, we'd each pay for our own meal, unless one of us offered to treat for a special occasion. This method ensured that no one felt financially burdened or taken advantage of. There were no entanglements regarding property or inheritance because we each maintained our own separate homes and bank accounts. This arrangement gave us both freedom and peace of mind. Our families loved this setup, which surprised me. My son and daughter-in-law, who visited occasionally, noticed how much happier and more energetic I appeared. Instead of living alone in a quiet house, I now had daily companionship and a sense of purpose. My son sometimes refers to Patricia as my lifelong buddy, and he is truly grateful that I'm not in a situation where I'm lonely or depressed. Patricia's 2 children, who live out of state, appreciated that she too was receiving emotional and practical support. When they come to visit, they treat me like family. At Thanksgiving, for instance, Patricia's daughter baked an extra pumpkin pie just for me. Uncle James, as she now calls me, it's that sense of being included in a loving family environment, without the formalities or obligations of remarriage, that I find so touching. Of course, not everyone understands our arrangement. A couple of my old friends from Chicago are skeptical. They wonder if this informal partnership will last should one of us become seriously ill or lose the ability to care for ourselves. They ask James, "What if you end up in the hospital? What if Patricia can't leave her house anymore?" Well, here's my honest response. None of us can truly predict what might happen in the future. Concerns like these are valid, but I've learned that constantly worrying about every worst-case scenario only robs you of living your best life in the here and now. If we do face bigger health challenges down the line, we'll tackle them together, possibly with professional medical help or assistance from family. The key is that I don't want to let fear of tomorrow overshadow my happiness today. Furthermore, this arrangement doesn't preclude other forms of support if or when they become necessary. If I break my leg one day and temporarily need more care, perhaps I could hire a short-term nurse or ask my children to stay for a while. Maybe Patricia would choose to live with one of her children if her mobility declined drastically. There are myriad possibilities. The point is, right now, we both enjoy good health, moderate independence, and, above all, each other's company. To me, that's a blessing worth embracing, without apology. In thinking about how my life has changed over the last few years, I can't help but feel profoundly grateful. This mutual support approach has given me a sense of fulfillment, companionship, and a kind of gentle stability that I might not have found if I had gone down a more traditional path, whether that be remarriage, institutional care, or a hired caregiver. Every morning feels like a fresh opportunity. Whether it's planning a shared meal or exploring a new hobby, I have someone to share the simple joys with. And every evening, we each return to our own homes, our own personal spaces, ending the day with a sense of privacy and comfort. It's the best of both worlds. Now, I would never claim that this lifestyle is the perfect solution for everyone. Every individual situation is unique. Some may find genuine joy in a second marriage or in a senior community that offers group activities and constant social stimulation. Others might prefer living with adult children, cherishing the daily presence of grandchildren under the same roof. And there are seniors who genuinely appreciate having a dedicated caregiver at home, especially if they have complex medical conditions. My advice is simply this: take the time to explore all possible avenues. Think hard about what you truly value: your finances, your personal space, your desire for companionship. Your independence is important. Talk openly with your loved ones to see what solutions might make sense. Above all, be true to yourself. You are the one who will be living with these decisions day after day. I also encourage anyone considering a nursing home or assisted living arrangement to do thorough research. Visit the facilities, talk to current residents, check staff-to-patient ratios, and gauge the overall atmosphere. Sometimes, well-run facilities can be a blessing, offering specialized care and social events. However, not all nursing homes deliver on their promises. Too many are underfunded or understaffed, leaving residents feeling isolated or neglected. The peace of mind you gain from thorough investigation is well worth the effort. Likewise, if you're thinking about hiring a caregiver, outline your expectations clearly. Make sure personalities align, and confirm that you can sustain the financial costs for the long term. One final observation. As we age, mental well-being often matters as much, if not more, than physical health. Loneliness can be crippling, especially if you're used to a home brimming with family. A mutual support arrangement can alleviate that sense of isolation. Even if you don't have a childhood friend like I do, perhaps you can find someone in your community who shares similar interests. Maybe you meet at a local senior center, through a church group, or even online forums for older adults. It takes time to build the right rapport and trust, but in my view, the rewards are immeasurable. To all the listeners out there, thank you for giving me this chance to share my experiences. I hope that by talking openly about my choice to avoid remarriage, nursing homes, and hired caregivers, I can spark a new conversation about what aging can look like. We deserve to live with dignity, independence, emotional connection, and personal agency, regardless of our age. If this resonates with you, or if you know someone who might benefit from hearing this perspective, please share it. Let's continue this discussion. Feel free to leave comments or stories about your own experiences. The more we exchange real-life anecdotes, the better we can support one another in navigating our later years. If you found value in this podcast, please consider subscribing or sending the link to a friend or family member. In future episodes, I plan to explore practical tips on maintaining mental and emotional health, suggestions for low-cost hobbies that enrich daily life, and strategies for strengthening community ties. Until then, I wish each and every one of you good health, happiness, and the courage to carve out the aging experience that feels right for you. Let's keep talking, keep sharing, and keep building a community of understanding and empathy. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you next time.